5-year-old designer Krishan Ramduhu walked away with the prestigious Young Fashion Designer Award. Using the theme Ride the Wave, Ramduhu's design stood out for its creative interpretation of life under the sea. The Pietermaritzburg resident spoke to SABC News, discussing the thought process behind his winning effort.
I wanted to do something unique on my dress, which was bringing out different textures. With regard to the coral reef in the ocean, all of the corals are different. So I tried to improvise different types of material and styles of putting it into that wave that I have on the dress. And it worked to me that when I did some research, it was coral reef serves as a breakwater, so it like reduces floods and tsunamis because it crushes the waves. That is why I chose that theme.
Recapping the top story, a man wanted in connection with the murder of a 7-year-old boy in Pietermaritzburg last week has been murdered in an apparent act of mob justice. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
Get ready for an exciting show. Believe it, family. It's a big day for 25K. In this brand new show, join us as we follow couples across South Africa on their journey to create their dream wedding for only 25K.
Our biggest hope is that everything fits in the budget of 25K.
There were many things that we had to do in 3 days' time.
We'll share in their disappointment.
It's also stress. Somebody let me down early this morning.
It's a very expensive dress. I don't know how we're going to afford to buy this dress.
And celebrate their triumphs.
I always dreamed of this day, but ke sa tsebe hore na e tlo phethahala jwang.
Thank you to everyone that made this day.
A big day for 25K starts the 9th of June, Sunday, 7:30 p.m. only on SABC2.
Yeah, we can do this. It's been a long time coming. This deserves to grow. It's a great business. If they don't like it, someone else will. And fund me so I can expand. Maybe I can offer them shares. I need to retain equity for staff. It's going to be good for recruitment. Yeah.
Possible begins with that one great idea. When Telkom enables entrepreneurs to make their ingenuity a reality, we grow local economies. Telkom. Possible begins here.
What's up, good people? It's Bulela Podisa, the girl from next door that you can call friend. This is Deal or No Deal Celebrity. Catch us every Saturday at 6 p.m.
Nelson Mandela once said,
"It is in your hands to create a better world for all who live in it."
SAFM urges you to identify those in need around you and to do what you can to make a difference to them. Tata Mandela went further to say, "What counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we led." SAFM celebrates Mandela Month. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
9 after 10 o'clock, welcome to the second hour of the show. You're listening to The Talking Point. Coming up in this hour, we're kicking off our series, which is going to be looking at the agricultural sector. Now, South Africa has a very robust agriculture export market. It's worth $12.8 billion US, and small-scale farmers play an important role not only in providing economic opportunities for rural communities, but also play a role in food security and poverty alleviation. However, your small-scale farmers do face serious challenges that often limit the extent to which they can build a sustainable agricultural venture, including limited access to markets, financial constraints, and inadequate infrastructure, just among some of those challenges that they face. As part of a series of discussions, we are going to be unpacking the state of our agricultural sector, focusing on the 2 million small-scale farmers that are in operation, and we'll also be speaking, of course, to organizations that represent this segment of the agricultural landscape. To kick off our conversation this morning, I'm joined by Cathy Mohlahlana, who is a potato farmer and an attorney. Cathy, good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning, Cathy. And good morning to your listeners. My name is Kaku.
Kaku. Oh, apologies for that. Apologies. Type on my end, Kaku. Ipileng Kwadi is a cattle farmer. Ipileng, a pleasure to have you in studio. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. It's such an honor to be here this morning.
The fact that we've got 2 female farmers in studio already says that there is change in the farming sector. It's good to see women that are also taking part in farming activity. We'll get into part of what your experiences have been shortly. Nico Maluleke is the CEO of Buhle Farming Academy. Nico, good morning.
Good morning, Cathy. Good morning, Alex and the viewers, and thanks for inviting me to be here.
All right, Nico, I hope that connection to you is going to hold up. It does sound a bit shaky, but let's see if it doesn't get better as we continue with this conversation. So I think first things first, what I would like to hear from you is how you would describe your experiences within the farming sector so far. We're often told that agriculture is, one of the sunrise sectors of our economy, that it's one that's full of opportunity. People need to get into farming because there's so much that they can do. What has been your experience, Kaku, and how did you get into farming?
Well, Cathy, I was raised in a family that farms. Mm-hmm. So as a little girl, I always saw my father farming from our backyard, that is. So when I decided to quit corporate, I just thought farming would be a viable business for me to venture into. So far, farming, just like any other business, it has its own challenges. But from a woman point of view, I feel it's an industry that is dominated by men. And as such, as a woman, you always have to fight harder and you always have to speak louder for your voice to be heard. Unlike any other businesses, farming is not a one-man business. So it takes all stakeholders to come on board, from government to the market, to actually create this farming enterprise to become a viable business that is self-sustainable. So getting all the stakeholders involved and participate with impact, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of negotiating, and for you to win their trust. So it has been challenging, but we pulled through.
So when you quit your job in corporate, had you already started with your farming enterprise on the side, or were you going in hard?
No, I haven't started, and little did I know that it will actually take me another year to get a farm. So while I was farm hunting, I started farming at home in the village. I'm from a small village called Mpupuleji at Hamurima in Limpopo. Okay. So we farmed with my dad's help, in a 1-hectare land in my village. While I was farm hunting, and we did cabbages and butternuts. We sold to the school nutrition projects. So I had a lot of calling to make, called all the entrepreneurs, asking who is supplying in my next door school. Because I went to the school and they said, you can't just bring cabbages. There are people, there are service providers. So I eventually got hold of the service providers that they would actually come and buy. We have a school just next to us. So they would just buy from us and take directly to the school. And with the leftover, we'll take to the local market. And all that is when I'm farm hunting.
Sure.
Eventually, I did get a farm wherein we negotiated a lease to buy contract in a commercial area. Now the job was to actually identify which crop in this huge 334 hectares farm with no infrastructure.
Sure.
I started reaching out because I found out that the area that I'm planting in, or where the farm is located, is a potato belt. It's in the potato belt of South Africa. So I started reaching out to people like McCain, PepsiCo, asking, how do I get an offtake agreement? And they said, you need to have a center pivot, you need to have water capacity pumping at 10 liters per second, all this technical language that I didn't even understand. How do I know the water is pumping at 10 liters per second? We don't even have boreholes in that farm. So eventually, I managed to speak to McCain, and they gave me an offtake contract 2 years later.
Wow.
We were also busy with the infrastructure. We actually reached out to government, and it was not that easy with government, of course. I ended up running to national, reporting the governments in Limpopo, saying they are not helping me. I got a farm, it took me an entire year, and now I've got an offtake agreement. I need to produce potatoes, but I don't have center pivots. I don't have boreholes, and they are resistant. How do you help? And it took national government to come to the farm to actually come and see, is this young lady with a tiny voice really in this farm? Wherein now she's struggling to get assistance. So they did a farm visit, and they called everyone from Limpopo Agriculture to actually come and see that this passionate farmer who just wants to produce potatoes. And from there, they came on board with assistance with infrastructure, which is center pivot and boreholes, and we took it from there. And we can continue.
What a journey you have been on, and the reason why I wanted you to share that journey is because there are going to be so many people that listen to your experience and could well find that they resonate with what you're saying, and that it's seemingly part of the process. You know, you have to take the initiative. You have to go out there, literally try and break the doors in order to make things possible. Ipileng, let me come to you. You are a cattle farmer. Tell us more about how you ended up in this industry and how you became a farmer.
Okay, thank you very much, Cathy. Agriculture, it's so beautiful on the media. I mean, even if you didn't have interest, you might end up taking all your investment and just put them into agriculture. Well, in a nutshell, agriculture, many people, when you ask them, why did you choose farming? They'll say passion. But I'm telling you, it's not only passion that will drive the business, A little bit background, it needs a lot of hard work. If you go through my profile, I think I'm on the 4th generation farm.
Wow.
My great-grandfather was married to 2 wives, and we had a whole huge family. So the old man has to make sure that there's enough food on the table. And by that time, if you can go through our communities, they used to buy land through their chiefs, their kings, and getting the land, they'll make sure that they identify the land for the livestock, for their crops, agricultural purposes, and also for the settlement. So during those days, my grandfather was very slim. He was like, okay, I'm going to get my first family this plot, and then the second family this plot, so that they can operate. So that's how it all started. Then my grandmom also did the same thing when she got married. Unfortunately, on the village that they were operating in, they were using the different system. They were using the backyard. They were allocating each family a huge part of the land so that you keep for settlement, and then the backyard for farming. So now here's my dad. He's now seeing, okay, I've seen challenges from the first generation farm. Now it's my mom. And then I want something better for my kids, you know. I saw farming as a way of living. We are sustaining our families, but now I think because we are getting into trainings and we are learning a lot every day, I think I can do better. And then that's how he leased a farm in Brettstown in the Northwest Province, and decided that no, I'm not going to go for crops and mixed farming, but I'm going to concentrate on cattle farming. And it took us years to actually finalize that, okay, we're going to decide on the specific breed that we're going to be dealing with as a family. So that's how Ipileng grew up in the family, where there are cattle, their family, but we know that in all those years we always see males are the ones who are going to the kraal doing these activities. Unfortunately with me it was different. I wanted myself to be in the kraal, assist my brother to milk, you know, and each and every week there's something new that Ipileng knows, Ipileng is coming with, and Ipileng is coming with a whole lot of ideas that I think we are doing things this way, we can do better. So yes, that's how basically I came across.
So Ipileng, has it always been farming for you? That once you were finished with school, you went straight into farming?
Once I finished after school, I've never thought I'll go directly into farming because I went for teaching, you know. But I did agricultural sciences and geography. Obviously, in farming, you need climate, you know, you need to understand economy, you need to be informed. So, but then on weekends, I'm at the farm. During the school holidays, I'm at the farm. But yeah, and then basically, I finished my degree in education. I started working, and I did a lot of work in the classroom because, you know, as a teacher, those kids, they need to understand that the vegetables, they don't just come from the shelf. You have to spend. There's land, there's climate, and there's water.
What was one of the things that surprised you about farming that perhaps you didn't expect, especially again, as you're saying, culturally often when it comes to farming, yes, women are found with the fresh produce and the crops and everything else. It's often the men that will then be dealing with the livestock.
It has been, you know, this thing of labor. Women must be in the kitchen, men must work outside and all those things. At some point, the barrier had to be broke. We had to break the barrier because women are different right now. You know, women are on the leadership positions, and women are coming with a whole lot of brand new ideas into this industry. So for me, it was very surprising, but to my family, they were surprised because they've never had such a daughter who do such a work. And each and every week, there's something new, like I've said. So now it was time for the auctions. I'm always in the kraal, but now she wants to go to the auction. And we know that it's only Dad and my brother who goes to the auction. But this time I want to go to the auction. So that's how everything unfolded. They had no choice. I was unstoppable.
Wow. What a story, Ipileng. And thank you for sharing that with us. And if you've been to an auction, you know, it's not only, a whole lot of men, but I think there's also the racial dynamic that comes to play, that often you see at an auction. Often, if you walk into an auction, you'll see, there's a few black men, a whole lot of white men, and very few women, if any, are there to participate in the auction, let alone be those that are involved in running the affairs. So good for you, Ipileng, for that level of participation. Nico, you are the CEO of the Butle Farming Academy. Tell us more about how you ended up in the sector, Nico, and what some of your experiences have been.
No, thank you very much, Cathy. Yeah, I grew up I come from Guyana, and I grew up there, went to an agricultural high school, went to university, did agriculture, just like Ipeleng, went on to teach in an agricultural high school, and it moved on like that up until I found myself here, where at Buse Farmers Academy, we are in the business of developing farmers. And the reason that we do this is because, you know, in South Africa, we have many universities and colleges of agriculture that are training people, but they are not trained.
Nico, we're going to have to put you up on a different line. Apologies for that. That connection to you is simply not great, but we'll give you a chance then to come in and share some of your stories. So I'm going to continue with the ladies in studio for now. Kaku, what would you say that some of the challenges that you as a farmer have experienced are?
Cathy, as a small-scale farmer, I started farming. Our first harvest was in 2019. So I will speak broadly.
After how many years? After how many years were you able to have your first harvest?
Since 2014. So it took 5 years.
It took 5 years?
Yes, it did. It took a year to get a farm. It took 2 years to get off-take agreements. It took another year to get infrastructure. And then eventually we got the wheel rolling. So challenges that are facing small-scale farmers, and I will speak specifically for potato producers, is, I would say, access to equipments, farming equipment. That's like going to school without a pen. A farmer must have a tractor, must have farming equipment. Access to facilities, production facilities, those are your revolving credits for production. And access to land, bigger land. From a potato point of view, we need to rotate fields. You can't plant on the same field this season that you just harvested. You need to rotate and let the field rest. So, and potato cannot really be planted on a small scale, 2 hectares, 5 hectares like tomatoes. It doesn't make business sense. The margins are very thin. It only makes business sense from 10 hectares upwards. As a result, even commercial markets, they start giving you off-take agreements when you're planting at a 10 hectare scale. And you need to show the market that you can rotate. Therefore, you need to have a minimum of 40 hectares for you to start planting the potato crop. If you only have 10 hectares and you're a small-scale farmer, you won't get that off-take agreement, most likely, because how are you going to rotate? It means you will only produce for 1 season, and that's the end. So access to land is still a very big issue with small-scale farmers. They remain small-scale even though they have capacity and they know how, because they don't have the land. Facility, credit facility for production. You can't farm cash. Let me give you a practical example. I harvest this month, and I'm waiting for payments and the policy for that company that I produce and deliver to, say we pay after 30 or 60 days. But farming is all about seasons. We have a planting window, and when that window is open, you plant. And the season is going to run out if you're waiting for payment. But if you have that facility, you go and access the facility and buy your inputs, and you're able to, if you don't have equipment, you go and hire the tractors and other equipment and continue and move, keep the wheel rolling while you're waiting for other payments. So without the credit facility, it's called production facilities, normally is given by institutions like Vika Beer, which is NTK, AgriCap. They give those facilities to farmers because they know how it works. So if you don't have that, it means you wait for payment, then the planting for the season for planting then ends while you're waiting. It's not sustainable.
Given the amount of money that you actually need to get things going, and you in corporate had just sort of quit your job, How much more difficult does that make it when you are now trying to access the financing? Because obviously you go to any institution and they want guarantees. They want to know that you're going to be able to pay back this loan.
Cathy, if I start telling my story, I can write a book, personal story of how I had to run into financial difficulty because I chose to become a farmer. I had car repossessed. Things just went south. Now, by the time I got that farm, I was in zero. You can imagine that's a year later, no income. When you approach these institutions, I'll mention one specifically that I know works with potato farmers. So I was being assisted by a McCain extension officer because I had an off-take with them. So he knows what is required. And he said, look, Kaku, your farm ticks all the boxes. It's actually, you are in a commercial farm. It's just that now you are small scale because you don't have the resources. Let's upscale you and get you facilities. We ticked all the boxes, we applied, and the feedback that we got was we need a title deed. I'm in a lease to buy agreement. I will buy when the farm is ready to purchase this property. But right now we're trying to get this farm working and generate revenue. So it's just difficult for someone who's a self-starter without the savings, or who have exhausted all the savings, to move from A to B, from small scale to a little bit commercial. We don't really have to run and become commercial. We need to learn first from a small scale, of course, and understand the business.
All right. We're going to continue this conversation in a moment. You'll hear from Ipileng and, of course, from Nico too. It's time for your latest news headlines.
Good morning. In the headlines, humanitarian aid organisation Gift of the Givers say they are looking to assist communities in Wuppertal and surrounds in the Cederberg that have been cut off due to flooded roads. A man wanted in connection with the murder of a 7-year-old boy in Pietermaritzburg last week has been murdered in an apparent act of mob justice. And Johannesburg residents and business owners say they don't believe the CCTV cameras recently installed as part of a crime-fighting initiative by Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi will deter criminals. I'll have details on these and other stories at 11.
Taking a look at your markets this morning, the rand is currently trading at 18 rand 14 to the dollar, 23 rand 25 to the pound, and 19 rand 66 to the euro. Markets in Asia ended on a negative note. The JSE weaker in mid-morning trade. Markets in Europe are slightly firmer this hour. Gold is trading at $2,377. Platinum $1,012 per ounce. The price of Brent crude oil is at $86.18 a barrel.
It can never be freezing cold with SABC Sport on board this July.
The 12 Nations battle in the Hollywood Bets Cassava Cup will reveal the ultimate Southern African champs.
Mzansi's Queens of the Beautiful Game display real passion in the Hollywood Bets Super League.
The Germans are in town as Vivian Wiesbaden tackles the Citizens and Stellies, while FC Augsburg clashes with TS Galaxy FC.
While Sport at 10 gives you a solid reason to stay awake on Wednesday nights.
TKO brings you in-depth analysis in the boxing world.
Top sport journalists table-spoiling conversations on the Jonas Vodcast. Meanwhile, Foot Afrique zooms into continental football.
Countdown to Paris goes downhill towards the Olympic Games Paris 2024, kicking off on 26 July.
NBA Lifestyle, Youth Sport Show, Goats Like Us, Final Analysis, EFC 115, and many more. Happy Madiba Month.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The world's best cooking show is coming to S3. MasterChef South Africa Season 5. You'll meet 20 talented home cooks from around Mzansi, Noma Uphumapi, and no matter your favorite dish. See if the chefs can handle the heat in the kitchen in a race to be crowned MasterChef South Africa. Starts Saturday 13 July at 7:30 p.m. on S3, Channel 193. MasterChef South Africa, proudly sponsored by Pick n Pay.
The inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference will take place from 10 to 12 July 2024 in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. Tune in to The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga and The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda to get insights from the conference. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
Well, thank you all for tuning into the show. We are unpacking the state of the agricultural sector with a particular focus on small-scale farmers. It's part of a series that will be running over a couple of weeks, and hopefully we'll get insights and a better picture of what is happening in the industry. Join me in studio, Cathy Mohlahlana, who is a potato farmer and attorney. Nico Maluleke is the CEO of Butle Farming Academy, and Ipileng Gwadi is a cattle farmer. Nico, we have you on a different line. Good morning again. Hopefully we'll be able to hear each other better this time.
Good morning, Cathy. Good morning to the viewers, and I hope I'll be clear this time.
It's absolutely much better. So, Nico, you of course were telling us how you got into farming, where the journey began.
Yes, like I indicated, I was born in a rural village at Tiandani in Giyani. Went to an agricultural high school called Ketongumayo. Went to university, did my degrees in agriculture, and went back to teach up until I found myself where I am now, where we are in the business of training farmers, because we realize that, we need more people to get into farming. And but looking at our tertiary institutions, they don't focus on training farmers, but they focus on training, academics who can advise farmers. Then we, as Butle Farmers Academy, said we are going to start an institution that will focus on training farmers. Simple because we believe that you can only learn farming by actually farming. You must be in a farm. Because we look at successful commercial farmers. I mean, just like Ipeleng was saying, that is a fourth generation person who's in farming. That's how farming usually works. But you find that because of our history, we've got very few people or black people that are in sustainable, viable farming because they've not been having these farms, some of them. And as Butle Farmers Academy, we said, let's get as many young black people as possible, train them on how to run a farm sustainably to be able to do that. Because for someone to be successful in farming, you must make more than what you're spending. So in other words, your business must be profitable. Even though you're small scale or smallholder or emerging, whatever term that is used, but you must be able to make enough and make more than what you're spending to be able to survive in this. And over the years, we realized that, sometimes we look down on smallholder farmers or small-scale farmers, but their impact is huge. I mean, there was a study just in 2016 that indicated that, South Africa then had about 13 million cattle, and 42% of that was from smallholder farmers. So someone might be having 10 cattle, someone having 20, some 30. But if you combine all of them, they have a big impact in terms of the agriculture in South Africa. And we continue to train and support people in that regard.
All right. Ipileng, the knowledge and the expertise to be able to farm and farm efficiently is often one of the challenges that small-scale farmers talk about, that, they need somebody to walk the journey with them, and often they don't have that. You, as fourth-generation farmer, perhaps have the benefit of knowledge, insight in terms of how to do what you need to do. What then become the challenges for somebody in your particular position?
Well, knowledge is power in agriculture, and I know farmers, they love networking a lot and sharing ideas. So agriculture is evolving every day. We are in fourth industrial revolutions. We are talking about technology and all those things, and which the knowledge that our great-grandparents, they don't have, They'll come with a knowledge that is indigenous. When a cattle is sick, they know what they used to do. When it's this season, they knew those indigenous mixtures they used to make sure that they control their specific diseases. So now in terms of diseases, we do have the management plans. We do have our vets who comes and give us the ideas of how we can do your health programs, So I think from my point, it's very important that these knowledges, the indigenous knowledge and the current knowledge, they're brought together and we sit down on the table and we share these ideas, because now farmers are complaining about climate change. And you can see that some of the things that causes the climate change that we're experiencing currently is because of the things that have been done. Trying to say we are trying to fit in the world of fourth industrial revolution, and we tend to forget about how things were done at the back. Yes. So I think it's a matter of balancing, getting all the information, not throwing the information, because we know our great-grandparents, they never used to write. They didn't know how to write. Unfortunately, some of the information that we could be using now, it's lost because our cousins were not interested, I mean, it's not everybody in the family who'd love agriculture, but then we lost some of the most important methods that were used back in the villages. But I'm happy when you drive around our villages, in our villages down there, you'll find an old woman sitting down there, having a plan of saying, okay, I'm going to plant this, how much watermelon, and I'm going to harvest. And then this one will be for the family, and this one I'll use it for the business because they are doing informal trading on the streets. And then our grandmothers also, they know this particular seeds. I'm going to keep the seeds and make sure that for the next season I'll be able to have the seeds, But then with us, no, it's not like that. We just want to go and buy. We think those modified seeds are the better ones. You just want to see yourself going there, ordering, putting a whole lot of order to say, I want to buy.
You want 12 months of watermelon.
Yes.
Which is, of course, is part of what leads to what you're talking about, the genetically modified foods. Nico, as somebody who trains farmers on a day-to-day basis, what would you say are the common mistakes that people make?
Look, I think it's some of the people get into these, for the sake of, they'll say, I love farming, I've been producing these, or my family have been producing this for years. I'm into this because of love. It's a good thing in one hand, but sometimes they make mistakes because they tend to produce things that they want instead of focusing on what the market wants, because they are going to supply the market. So we encourage them that it must be, it must not just be just the love or just the passion. I think to talk about it, it must not just be the passion, but you must look at what does the market want at that specific time, and you produce for the market. So most small-scale farmers, they produce crops because they've been doing that for many years. So it sometimes makes it a challenge, and sometimes even not diversifying. Because if you're small scale, at least have different kinds of enterprises that you're running, so that if one is struck by diseases or if there's a problem in one, at least you still have something to fall off. To fall on to be able to carry on your business. And some of the other things is that most farmers that we train, the biggest challenge, one of the things that they don't like doing is keeping records. Someone will tell you, I've been farming for 2 years, for 3 years, 5 years. But if you say, can you show me proof of what you've been doing? There is nothing. And some of the support for example, whether it be funding institutions, or any other kind of support. All what they need, you say, okay, can you give us your 3 months bank statement? Can you give us, show us the market that you supplied previously and so on? And they have never returned those things down. And then they lose these opportunities. So that is one of the biggest challenges that we see in small-scale farming that they are having, record keeping. Because some have been there for years. But if you want records now, there's nothing. And it closes doors if some other institution want to come and support.
Kaku, do you want to add to that?
Nico is correct in saying that to keep the farm running and to make it sustainable, a farmer should have different enterprises. From a small-scale point of view, having those different enterprises, for example, when I rotate my potato with sugar beans, it means that straight after harvesting I need to put a disc there, run it over and prepare the field for the potatoes. But if the challenge is still equipment, which is tractors and all these implements, it means that you have to wait for your turn where you are hiring this equipment, or from the other farmer who's also busy with his farming activities to get your turn. And by the time you get hold of those equipments that you are lending and hiring, the season is running, and you are now unable to actually have those different enterprises, and which is the most viable way to sustain the farm, to have those different enterprises. So from a personal point of view, I have tried that. We have had small white beans, those cool beans for Tiger Brands, in the farm. We've had potatoes, we've had sweet potatoes, and we've also had pepper dews. So it's just one way of trying how else can we generate revenue and using different seasons, because those crops, they grow in different reasons and they have different requirements. But it ends up crushing the farm if the farm is not well capacitated in terms of the equipments. Then you end up losing focus on the actual crop that you should be preparing for and talking to people in terms of your turn of getting the equipment. Potato is a highly mechanized crop, by the way. It requires potato. You don't plant manually. You do potato planters, potato harvester. For us to harvest at least 10-hectare field, we normally have 4 tractors in the field. One is harvesting. One is carrying out the potatoes out to the truck. One is loading, carrying a forklift. So we always need this huge equipment when it's time to harvest. When it's time to plant as well, we need this planter, and the potato seeds can't sit in the farm for too long before they are planted. So whenever they get delivered, if they already sprout, they must go underground. So it means that you need a fueled machine, tractor. You can't have a small backyard tractor there moving a slow pace because.
So basically, Kaku, the first step of being able to even plant whatever choice of crop over, let's say, 40 hectares as the example you gave, that is just the beginning. You don't actually just sit back and wait until harvest, because there's so much else that needs to go into it before you can even see any revenue out of whatever season that you're in.
Of course, yes, Cathy. Let me just run through a quick process.
Very briefly for me, I've got a couple of listeners that want to contribute to the conversation.
Oh, okay. With potatoes, the most important stage is soil preparation. It determines your yield and the quality of potato. Sometimes, depending on this type of soil that you have in your farm, you might have to disc 4 times, horizontal, vertical, diagonal, so that you get the soil loose. So imagine if you're hiring and you're paying per hectare, and now you are disking 3 times, which means in a 10 hectare, you are paying 30 hectares just for disking. You still have to ridge, you still have to plant, and that's 50 hectares now on a 10 hectare.
Sure.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not for the faint-hearted at all. Chief Middleton, Ipileng, you're saying there like you're grateful for your cattle. Chief Middleton, you're in the Free State. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to all the listeners. Cathy, what a good topic. Cathy, I'm also an emerging, or so-called an emerging farmer here out in the Free State. And Cathy, farming is sometimes impossible with all the challenges we face. Number one, we are price takers, we're not price makers. So the market determines your pricing. And then also your input costs and so on are just things that go up all the time. I'm an irrigation farmer, and maybe my discussion or my comment will be more on the irrigation side, Cathy. Cathy, what we finding out in the irrigation space, number one, when we speak about water rights or water user entitlements, we as black farmers are still grappling with that process. I'm farming for 17 years as an irrigation farmer on an irrigation scheme, right? But I farm under 300 hectares under irrigation, and I only got 100 hectares of water rights, which means I cannot farm my farm optimally. Now, that didn't just happen because the previous people, government bought it from the commercial, some commercial farmers, right? There was enough water when they were here. Now, all of a sudden, when it got sold to government, here you're selling the place without enough water rights. So these are the kind of things. And then in order to get water rights, government speaks about 90 days and so on. Cathy, it's such an expensive undertaking because you need EIAs done. You need certificates, soil scientist certificates. You need engineer certificates. It makes that in itself the application process for water for black farmers. Now I'm really tedious. Now, we've had discussions with government, and it's the same old thing. Hey, it's here to stay. You guys better get yourselves jacked up in terms of technology and so on. So that's what we get from government. But I want to also say that the irrigation sector in particular, farming is what we call a capital-intensive business with low margins, right? So the only way you can actually make a sustainable and profitable living on farming is the economy of scale. So you always need to look out at how can I expand my business to reach that economy of scale. Because, Cathy, let's face it, I hear people talking about small scale, and small scale is largely, I'm not saying all the time, it's largely unprofitable and non-sustainable. So we need to move away from that notion of small scale. We need to speak about economically viable units.
Okay.
So that when government is buying farms, we've got to do the assessments and say, what is the earning potential of this farm, so that we can know the economic viability of it. And then we put people there, because it doesn't help. We're putting people on farms and we're battling. You've heard our sisters speaking about how long it took them just to get productive. Now you tell me, how are we then to compete with our counterparts? They are years and miles ahead of us, Cathy.
Yeah,
so at the end of the day, what we feel is government really needs to jack up their system, and we need to have a clear plan of developing farmers in this country and move away from small scale and more economically viable or commercialization of black farmers in the country.
All right, Chief Middleton, and thanks for that contribution out in the Free State. Ofenza, you're in the Northwest. Good morning.
Yes, morning, Cathy.
Yes.
Good morning to your guest. Cathy, I'm someone who's living with a disability. I'm based in Rustenburg, as you just said. See, I want to start commercial farming in cattle, like a feedlot kind of a situation. Now, in my village, I already have land. There's water, sufficient land and water. And my problem is getting a grant in order to buy the livestock. Because the people I'm talking to in government, I went to this other department, they said they want something like 17,000 just to put my proposal through. I don't have that kind of money. So basically what I'm asking for, pleading with anyone who's listening, is there a place where someone can put up a proposal which is viable and maybe get grant just to start the business.
Okay, Ofense, thanks for that question. We'll let you know if we get an answer. Dante, you're in KZN. Good morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and good morning to your panel there. I must just say, commend the ladies who have stuck it out and persevered in this tough sector, and also the gentleman who shared his experiences. I just want to pick up two main issues, Cathy. The issue on the land, the titleship, or commercial banks looking for titleship to be able to fund a farm. I did a research in my master's, dissertation on this topic, particularly looking at titleship, and this relates to communally owned land. That is land that is administered under the traditional councils or traditional leadership. I found that the success of agricultural development in South Africa hinges on financiers, and here when I say financiers, it's commercial banks, development finance institutions, and other private equity funders, to look at land in rural areas, and especially for funding commercial agriculture, that there is no need for titleship, because the structure of land ownership is not applicable in as far as titleship is concerned. And I did research covering China, East Asia, Latin American countries, Australia, to look at the models of funding land for agricultural production in rural areas. Titleship, it's not a factor, because land is valuable when you have production on the land. You can't fund land with no production, which is agricultural produce or production. So value on that land accrues when you have agricultural production. So therefore, funding should be for agricultural produce. That's the first point of my finding. The second point of my finding is that when it comes to now the issue of equity finance, government has to play a role to support black commercial farming. And my research was purely on black commercial farming. Must support black commercial farmers with equity finance, meaning when you go to a bank or a financier and you want to run a farming production, now, because of grant funding that is available in this sector, sometimes, unfortunately, we've got great policies, but we do not back it up with practical solutions.
All right.
Now, grant funding can be used as equity finance, coupled or plus the funding for production for a commercial farmer, so that you have a viable mix from supporting black commercial farming. So that's a key area that's going to make sure that our black commercial farmers, whether small or large, they can be successful. And lastly...
Okay, Dante, I'm going to have to stop you there, unfortunately, because we are running out of time for this conversation. But thank you for sharing some of your research insights there. Speaking on the role that government can play, Kaku, you spoke about your own personal experience and how, you went and you found somebody at the National Department who helped to intervene in your matter. Ipileng, what role do you think government can play in creating a better ecosystem for you as farmers?
I think making sure that they are distributing the land to the relevant people who are producing, you know. As billing as I am struggling to get the land. We are still leasing farms. We don't have land, and we are investing on the land that doesn't belong to us. We are having production. So my plea to the government is that they really need to go. We know the policies are there, but they need to make sure that the policies that are on the paper, they are also practical. You drive down to Limpopo, you drive down to Northwest to see those young farmers, especially youth, and say, we want to give ourselves maybe a plan for 10-year plan, and see with this youth, with so much information, so much research, how can they make the difference in securing the food for the country? So I think the most critical thing is the land. We can talk about fundings, the markets, yes, but we don't have land.
Okay, thanks for that. Kaku, just to wrap up, your concluding thought?
My concluding thought is that if you want to farm and you're sitting at home now, you have to start by farming. Do something in your backyard. Just start something, and then help will find you in the way. You can't reach out for help and apply for grants while you have nothing to show. You need to have the will and the courage to do what you can with what you have.
Nico, let me take the final thought from you briefly, please.
I would say that as long as people still have stomachs, agriculture will always be relevant. And when people want agriculture to be sustainable, it must be profitable, no matter how small production they are. It must be able to make profit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your contribution to this conversation. The first of a couple that we'll have on this show. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us. And congratulations to all of you. It might not be an easy journey, but it certainly sounds like you have done all you can to really push through some of those challenges. It's time for your latest news update.
In our top stories, Western Cape communities reaching out for help and Pietermaritzburg man killed in apparent mob justice attack. Good morning. Humanitarian aid organisation Gift of the Givers says they are looking to assist communities in Wuppertal and surrounds in the Cederberg that have been cut off due to flooded roads. Electricity outages have also been reported. Teams are also assisting close to 15,000 residents in the Western Cape who've been affected by flooding amid heavy rainfall and strong winds. Residents from mostly informal settlements are experiencing discomfort. Gift of the Givers spokesperson Alisa Blaise says some communities are completely cut off.
We are also receiving calls from various communities outside the Cape Metropole, especially the community of Wuppertal, who's completely cut off. Areas such as Umbakweni in Paul East, Amstelhof, and the Cederberg and Witzenberg area has reached out to us as well. Our operation will continue to 12 informal settlements today, and we will be on the ground doing assessments in the areas outside of the Cape Metropole and planning to assist these communities with the assistance of the relevant authorities, as some of the communities are completely cut off.
Free State MEC for Agriculture, Rural Development and Environmental Affairs Elzeby Rockman will conduct site visits to farms in Clarence badly affected by a veld fire yesterday afternoon. Runaway veld fires also affected areas including Fouriesburg, Bethlehem, Harrismith, Kroonstad, Edenville and Pietersburg. Agriculture Department spokesperson Zima Sambuwe says the cause of the veld fires is still unknown and the extent of the damage is yet to be determined. MEC Rockman is expected to also visit farms in the affected areas and to interact with the affected farmers as well as engage with officials of the Ditlabeng local municipality. Members of organised agriculture will visit the affected farms and assist farmers where possible. A man wanted in connection with the murder of a 7-year-old boy in Pietermaritzburg last week has been murdered in an apparent act of mob justice. The suspect's family contacted the Mountain Rise police station after the 43-year-old man's body was found on a footpath. He had multiple stab wounds. KwaZulu-Natal police spokesperson Jay Nikers says the suspect had a dispute with the boy's father over money.
It is believed that instead of reporting his whereabouts to police, He was found by members of the community who killed him. We appeal to communities not to resort to such barbaric forms of meting out justice to criminals. An eye for an eye will eventually lead to all of us becoming blind. Detectives are now investigating another murder, and it is only a matter of time before the perpetrators are brought to book.
Johannesburg residents and business owners say they don't believe the CCTV cameras recently installed as part of a crime-fighting initiative by Gauteng Premier Panyaza Lesufi will deter criminals. Earlier this year, the Gauteng government, in its endeavour to intensify the fight against crime, deployed various technology to enhance law enforcement and combat crime. It includes CCTV cameras, drones and e-panic buttons. Announcing his cabinet last week, Lesufi said the fight against crime, corruption and lawlessness will be at the centre of his administration. SABC News spoke to some of the residents on this.
It's never safe even when they are around. I do not think that it will improve any security around here. It's better we improve our security ourselves, not the CCTV camera, because it's clear that whoever who's watching them takes time to respond. Crime has already been done. They come after, so there's no need for it.
Yeah, always the crime is happening. You see, the camera is there. You see, but nothing can happen.
And finally, services have resumed at the Giyani municipality in Limpopo. The municipal offices was closed last week after a fire burned parts of the building. Essential services were suspended. Municipal spokesperson Stephen Mabunda says investigations revealed an electric fault was the cause of the fire.
We have been given a green light to occupy the building following conclusion of the forensic investigations. The final verdict is that there is no foul play, but rather electrical related fault as the cause of the fire.
Recapping the top story, humanitarian aid organisation Gift of the Givers say they are looking to assist communities in Wuppertal and surrounds in the Cederberg that have been cut off due to flooded roads. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation. Nelson Mandela once said,
"It is in your hands to create a better world for all who live in it."
SAFM urges you to identify those in need around you and to do what you can to make a difference to them. Tata Mandela went further to say, what counts in life is not the mere fact that we have lived. It is what difference we have made to the lives of others that will determine the significance of the life we led. SAFM celebrates Mandela Month. The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
See in small clip.
Good day, Sis Cathy. Sis Cathy, a very beautiful show. I wish we can have this kind of future, actually, of farming and agriculture, mostly like in a month, have it once or twice. So I do also do livestock, and I have a guy that I work with, and in the recent, if you remember that storm in Joburg recently, I think it last month or last month, with lightnings and everything, it hit our stock so much that lightning, like we lost I think around 10 ewes, lambs. So just to ask you guests quickly, how do they overcome that kind of situation where you lose livestock just like that? Or if you are farming cabbage and in a season they don't give? Thank you, Gwena.
Morning, Cathy. May you ask your guests there, even maybe to the gentleman who's running an academy of farming, have they ever come across the market cheat? For example, wherein you buy a bag of tomato seeds, classified as those large tomatoes, but after planting them, and then a very tiny, small products you receive. Have they ever come across that? and how to get rid of such or be clever on those type of things. Thank you, and for the nice topic. Honestly, everyone is a farmer. They just need access to land and not this title deed, the RDP, which Ramaphosa is trying to appease us with. We need land. We need land. Check the ZZ2. They are so big everywhere. We are surviving because of them, but we need some new incomers. Thank you.
Very interesting from Vuzuekaya. The same DA that he used to bash is now the friend of his political party. Life goes on. GNU, his party and his enemy of this party are going together. We will hear now what does he say about the DA that does not provide services. Every time talking about what the DA lacks, but never acknowledge what it does. And never acknowledge the fault of the ANC, where the voters themselves are turning against it because of what it did, mess with the service delivery, and what it didn't do, good quality service. Maladministration, corruption.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
You're listening to The Talking Point. Welcome to the final hour of the show. Thank you for those questions that you sent through. Unfortunately, of course, our guests have already left studio. But what we will do is that we will keep them around. As I said, this is going to be a series. So the next time then we get into it, there will be an opportunity perhaps for more broad answers to those questions that you asked when it comes to farming. Well, for the final hour then today, we're going to be turning our attention to early childhood development. The National Planning Commission has unveiled a report which calls for the coordination of key government departments in prioritizing early childhood development. There are, of course, a number of issues that have been highlighted when it comes to ECDs. Professor Mary Metcalf is a commissioner at the Planning Commission Education. She joins us now. Prof. Metcalf, good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Good morning, Cathy, and please call me Mary.
Absolutely. So we have had this policy around early childhood development in place for some time. I guess the reason why this year there is a call to action is not so much that there's anything new to be discovered, but it's that what we have committed to, we need to be implementing as a country.
You're correct, Cathy. Now, what we've done as the National Planning Commission is two things, and I'm going to talk about them both at a high level, and then you can pursue what's interesting in both of them. So firstly, we did issue an advisory to Cabinet in January, which focused on the issue of intergovernmental coordination. And that, as you say, it's been there on paper since, for the last 15 years, at least since the National Integrated Plan for Early Childhood Development. But Cathy, coordination across government is much more easily spoken about in general terms than it is to action. And in that advisory, we proposed a mechanism for coordination. You might want to come back to that because I think it's interesting. The second thing that we've done, and this was very exciting last week, is that everything in the National Development Plan can only really be achieved in partnership with the country as a whole. The NDP is not a plan for government. It's a plan for the whole of society. And there's few areas where this is more true than early childhood development. So what we did last week is we issued our call for action for early childhood development, and we had representatives of a range of those components of society that are so critical to ensure that early childhood development work succeeds. Now, both of those, both the advisory and the call to action, are predicated on our belief that early childhood development, attention to early childhood development and making progress in that field is critical to our future. So that's the big picture.
Before we get into some of the issues that you have highlighted, including the difficulties with coordination, at a government level, what does early childhood development entail? So within this policy framework, what is it really that we want to achieve as a country?
Well, Cathy, I so love the question. I'll tell you why. Is because early childhood development starts from conception. It's about the emotional, cognitive, sensory, spiritual, all of the components of development, and particularly the importance of health in the maternal pregnancy phase, in the first weeks and days and months of being born. So if you just stay with early childhood development being maybe a focus from conception to at least the age of 6, then it is everything that all of society, together with government departments of health, social development, education, and a range of departments must do together to make sure that we build the best possible basis. Why I like the fact that you asked the question is because there's a way in which we speak in the country when we say we think ECD and we think early learning centers. They are but one component of ECD. And I quite like it when people make the distinction and are clear, because otherwise we just think early childhood development is a bit of preschool. No. Early childhood development is caring for young children from the beginning. Now, why that is so important is because the National Development Plan made ECD a priority. It said it must be a priority. And while there has been progress, we are still seriously behind. Not all children are experiencing the reality of what the Constitution gives them, which is the right to basic nutrition, to shelter, to basic health care, to social services. Our children are not getting access, and this is one of the hardest things, even to the issue of adequate food. The levels of stunting are of great concern. So we are seeing young children whose physical growth is so affected by malnutrition that they are stunted in their development. And this is something that as a country we have to put our hands together to absolutely avoid.
And the issue of stunting, as you've highlighted, Mary, says, is such a challenge for the country, and in many ways it brings us to the ways in which we then are creating an ecosystem in which children are able to thrive. Now, the childhood grant is supposed to be part of an answer to that, right? To assist children so that their caretakers can provide for them. Where is the gap? Why are we still seeing these high levels of malnutrition and stunting in a country where we do have basic support for children whose parents are indigent and need that support?
It's an important question, Cathy. I think that what happens is that, and this is not an expert view, this is Mary, the teacher, the educationist, thinking about why this must be the case. But children who are poor are in vulnerable families. And often it's the family as a whole who are needing support. Our social protection provision from the state is not where we would like, where the South Africans would like it to be. And I think it may be that mothers with young children are using the child support grant for broader family needs, such as food. You know, the data that we get from the household survey says that 2/3 of households that experience hunger are located in urban areas. Household hunger is a problem in KwaZulu-Natal and in Gauteng. So if you receive a grant of any form, old age grant, a child support grant, my sense would be that would be used to benefit the family as a whole, which is absolutely understandable. The children that receive the child support grant are also the first in line to receive the Early Childhood Education Centre grant, which is given to the centres which provide early childhood education opportunities for young children. And that grant prioritizes the most poor. So if you are running an early childhood education development center, you would then be able to provide proof of your registration and of which children are on the child support grant, and then there would be additional support for those children, which would include, with a limited amount of money that is given, access to a meal.
Again, when we talk about early care, Mary, we're talking about the first 1,000 days of a child's life. That's literally right up until they're 2 years old. Why is this first 1,000 days so critical? And often, people think, well, these children are too young. They won't remember anything, It won't be that bad, because even if they go through traumatic experiences, it's something that will not maybe have an impact on them as they grow older. But of course, the research suggests otherwise.
And it's such an important question. And I hope anybody who's listening and saying, yeah, Cathy, why would, it's not important. There's several reasons. Is physically, physiologically, neurologically, the laying down of cognitive development, brain development, even before the cognitive development that is built on that neurological development, is laid down in the first years on the basis of not only adequate food and health, but also on stimulation. The more that young children are cognitively stimulated, the way that they are listening to stories in their home language, the way that they're developing language, the way that they're manipulating, is all contributing to manipulating materials, is all contributing to the laying down of the neural pathways, which will then be the basis of all of their learning for their whole of their life. So neurologically, physically, the physical development, the not being hungry, the intellectual stimulation, adequate food. But you also have raised, correctly so, that the psychological sense of well-being starts in the womb. And it starts in those early days of learning basic trust with the adult who is caring for you. There's many psychological theorists. One of my favorite is Erickson, and he talks about the first 18 months of life, just learning the difference between trust and mistrust, and the resolution of that lays the basis for future relationships. If you don't have a relationship of trust with caregivers around you, the whole basis of your interaction with society is rooted in a deep sense of distrust. So the greatest gift that you can give a young child is that sense of confidence and security and trust. It's the basis of confidence. It's the basis of how successful they will be in school and in life.
Let's talk about the then integration of all of these different stakeholders. What I like about what you've shared so far, Mary, is the fact that, you know, when it comes to early care, this is not just something that is in the hands of government alone. In fact, it's something that begins in the home, and government has a role to play, but that could well be somewhere further down the line, and that, you know, there is basically a role that families play. There's a role that communities can play too within this ecosystem.
So, Cathy, if you'll allow me, I'm going to start off with the conception of what government should be doing at national, provincial, and local level. And then I'll be able to talk about all of the community leadership, faith communities, community organizations, and I'll also be able to share with you some of the fabulous things that the leaders in these sectors were able to say. But, you know, the question of government coordinating their activities, it's necessary in early childhood development. It's necessary in dealing with hunger, dealing with crime. It's food security. All of those issues require effective government coordination. Now, what we want to have, what we've argued as the National Planning Commission with government and with the presidency, is let's have a clear goal for early childhood development. And that goal should encompass the contributions of all of the contributing departments. Now, fortunately, we have a very clear goal, and we also have an instrument to measure progress against that goal. And the goal should be all children are thriving by the age of 5. This means they're on track in terms of physical growth, and they're on track in terms of early learning. Now, the DBE has worked with a range of stakeholders and has developed a measurement of thriving by 5. Now, once you say, yes, we want children to be on track intellectually in terms of learning, and we want to they must be on track in terms of physical growth, then the government then has to say, okay, that's our goal. Now, what are the indicators of this? What are the particular actions and indicators that health must take responsibility for, social development must take responsibility, education must take responsibility for? And if they see this as one shared goal with individual contributions in terms of programs and, very importantly, clear indicators to measure progress. For example, micronutrient supplementation and fortification at local government level, functioning of child health services, early identification of disability. If the department can have indicators to measure progress in their responsibilities, and if these combined indicators for children thriving by 5 come before the relevant cabinet subcommittees, it means ministers can hold each other accountable on the basis of the evidence of progress against the indicators. Now, there's so much focus on national government, understandably, that we sometimes forget that actually, especially with early childhood development, there's many responsibilities at provincial level. So we need provinces to adopt a similar process. We need MECs for education, social development, health, public works and infrastructure, and cooperative governance, which is to the local government function, to have similar plans that are shared, that are integrated. And probably the most important level, well, know if you can compare the levels of importance, but local government is where the planning for ECD really happens. And that includes both of the integration of the health and social development and education functions, but it also, this is where the early childhood education centres come in. So the call for action, which is available on the NPC website, spells out, I think concisely, but in sufficient detail, responsibilities of national government, of provincial government and local government, before we start the call to all of the elements of society. So we call, as the NPC, we call upon national, provincial and local government, and then we call upon traditional leaders, parents and families. We call upon community structures, faith communities, researchers, NGOs supporting ECD. We call upon the philanthropy sector, the business sectors implied, to all come together, because investment in early childhood development is investment that's also saving resources subsequently. If we have healthy children who succeed better in school, who don't need the same levels of interventions in terms of health and social interventions, we will have saved.
All right.
Sorry, Cathy.
Sorry there, Mary. We're going to continue this conversation in a moment. Professor Mary Metcalf is a commissioner at the National Planning Commission. I'll, of course, also bring your views as our listeners to this conversation. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. It's 11:30.
With the news at 11:30, I am Dino Mutaung. Good morning. The South African Law Reform Commission is calling on interested parties to submit written submissions on its discussion paper, which seeks to review apartheid-era and colonial legislation. In other news, the humanitarian aid organization Gift of the Givers says they're looking to assist communities in Wuppertal and surrounds in the Cedarburg that have been cut off due to flooded roads, and a man has been shot dead by two unknown armed assailants at a salon at Moletlane village in Zebediela, Limpopo. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
The world's best cooking show is coming to S3. MasterChef South Africa Season 5. You'll meet 20 talented home cooks from around Mzansi, Noma Ukumapi, and no matter your favorite dish. See if the chefs can handle the heat in the kitchen in a race to be crowned MasterChef South Africa. Starts Saturday 13 July at 7:30 p.m. on S3, Channel 193. MasterChef South Africa, proudly sponsored by Pick n Pay.
It can never be freezing cold with SABC Sport on board this July.
The 12 Nations battle in the Hollywood Bets Kasapa Cup will reveal the ultimate Southern African champs.
Mzansi's Queens of the Beautiful Game display real passion in the Hollywood Bets Super League.
The Germans are in town as Vivian Wiesbaden tackles the Citizens and Stellies, while FC Augsburg clashes with TS Galaxy FC.
While Sport at 10 gives you a solid reason to stay awake on Wednesday nights.
TKO brings you in-depth analysis in the boxing world.
Top sport journalists table-thrilling conversations on the Jonas Vodcast. Meanwhile, Foot Afrique zooms into continental football.
Countdown to Paris goes downhill towards the Olympic Games Paris 2024, kicking off on 26 July.
NBA Lifestyle, Youth Sport Show, Goats Like Us, Final Analysis, EFC 115, and many more. Happy Madiba Month.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference will take place from 10 to 12 July 2024 in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. Tune in to The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga and The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda to get insights from the conference. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
The Talking Point with Cathy Mohlahlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
We're focusing on early childhood development, the latest call to action by the National Planning Commission. Professor Mary Metcalf is a commissioner at the NPC. Let me take Nyameko. You're calling us from Lusuki Sigi. Good morning, Nyameko.
Yes, morning to you, Cathy, and your guest there. I've been listening to what she's been saying with regards to the early childhood development. And she's quite right with what she's presenting in terms of the history of the program. But from what I see is that the early childhood development program has been focusing on socio-economic development of socio-economic support for the children and their caregivers. But now I would like to support that it should be more focused on the psychosocial stages of development that she has alluded to. Those are the psychosocial stages of development by Erik Erikson. I think we could employ that strategy to support the caregivers of the young children as they grow up, because I think through that we can help to fight a lot of things, including crime and illnesses, if the children are supported and then the mothers are given the enough information about parenting, especially. Because from where we come from as a nation, like the native people, you find out that there's a lot of challenges in terms of parenting. So if we can apply that strategy of psychosocial development and then support the caregivers, I think we can have a better future for our children.
All right.
And also in terms of inclusive education, there was something that was called inclusive education when I was doing a school health program. I think it was in 2011. It is something that was supposed to be spearheaded by the Department of Education, whereby children are supported from the school, and then the teachers are the ones that are spearheading the program in terms of identifying children that are in need, children that are struggling in terms of growth and in terms of passing their grades or whatever challenges that they are facing, and also in cooperation with the school health program that is part of the Department of Education. So those are the 2 points that I wanted to share for the program this morning. Thank you.
All right, Nyameko, thanks for that contribution. Mary, I don't know if you want to come in there on the support, that needs to be given to parents, to guardians, the psychosocial support for them to be able to actually provide that for their children.
Cathy, I think that Nyameko is my new best friend. Not only is he familiar with Erik Erikson and his work on psychosocial development, but I love the way that he's prioritized that this is a responsibility not only for the family, but also for communities. Now, clearly, the family is at the center of support for children. Those are the primary caregivers on whom the child depends. But it is the case that there are many families who themselves are struggling, and they need the support of community. They need the support of government. One of the speakers at the launch was Tsepo Manche from Real Reform for Early Childhood Development, which is a broad-based group of workers in the early childhood development field. And he said something that I really loved, and I think we should all take away with us. He said, when you see a child, be curious. Ask yourself, is this child safe? Is this child hungry? Is this child cared for? Now, I thought that was a wonderful way of just alerting people in communities who do, and we all have leadership positions in different ways, to just be vigilant. So, for example, are we making sure that in the communities where we live, that children are safe, that pavements are safe, that there's a vigilance of making sure that children are not in any way going to be subjected to danger, that there's places for them to play. Now, you could carry on making that list, and maybe your callers will say, actually, that's a good idea. There's lots of things we could be doing. But we need to make sure that the areas where we live are child-friendly and secure, and that would in itself give support to families that will, and all families need support. No? I'm sure you've had children and you know how demanding it is. So we have to have a child-orientated culture wherever we live.
Yeah, I love that perspective of when you see a child be curious, especially in a world where so often, we're told to mind our business. But that curiosity could perhaps also be what helps to save a child's life, or even bring the right kind of intervention into a child's life. Warren, you're calling us from Durban. Good morning. Good morning, Warren. All right, it looks like we've lost Warren on the line there. He wanted to talk about the role of local government when it comes to ECDs. Let's play this voice note from one of our other listeners.
Dear Mary, I think the CATS program has done all our learners a big disservice. Let's take mathematics into consideration. In maths, they are dealing with such huge numbers in each grade that some of those children cannot comprehend. But if we use smaller numbers, they would comprehend the smaller numbers first, and the big numbers will be learned as they go on later in life. Learning them at a grade 4, 5, and 6 level is, I think, ridiculous. When it comes to certain processes in mathematics, all these years we use a certain process that helped us. Now they're trying to change that process, and that process is causing more difficulty than easing methods for the children.
All right, Mary, do you have a particular response to that?
Yeah, I'm always happy to talk about what's happening in education outside of ECD. I didn't catch the name of the person from who called, but actually the curriculum and assessment policy document, which he's referring to as CAPS, does set out a gradual introduction of conceptual learning for maths from foundation phase into intermediate phase. And it is true that it gradually increases the size of the numbers being used, whether it's, in the beginning, two-digit, three-digit, going up from tens to hundreds to thousands. I would say, and not being a mathematical expert, that once the principles of doing the basic operations are well embedded with smaller numbers, that the increase to larger numbers is less of a challenge than the basic understanding. But maybe we can have another conversation with him about that one day.
All right. So overall then, what are the ways in which you believe there can be a level of accountability when it comes to the coordination or lack thereof when we're looking at the policy implementation agreements for ECD?
It's a very insightful question, because actually I am of the view, and that hasn't been expressed in the education advisory, is that ministers find it difficult to coordinate each other for lots of reasons. Number one, they're busy. Number two, they don't always are able to find the time where both ministers, 3 ministers, 4 ministers, 5 ministers are all available. The third reason is because it's difficult for ministers that are colleagues to hold each other accountable. So if you say this person must coordinate a meeting, they don't have the authority to insist that happens, that people that they come with data. Now, the Constitution gives the President in Cabinet the responsibility of coordination and government. And we really believe that whatever the function is that needs to be coordinated, firstly, it should be coordinated within the cabinet structure because meetings are scheduled, they're regular, there's a high level of discipline and organization around cabinet meetings. So instead of saying there must be another meeting of departments, which are very difficult to schedule and very seldom work, make the cabinet cluster and cabinet as a whole responsible for receiving reports on coordinated functions. And then the second thing that I really think is important in terms of making that coordination work is make the relevant departments responsible with clear indicators of the specific contribution that they are responsible for. Because if you can bring the contributions of all of the departments together into one document with clear indicators, and that serves before the Cabinet Subcommittee, then the whole of that Cabinet Subcommittee can say, this is going very well, but actually I'm a little bit worried that the vaccination program is not succeeding. So it becomes issue-focused, what's on the table. There's not lengthy speeches about what it would be nice to do, but clear attention to specific indicators that the responsible department must be monitoring.
All right. Well, certainly a lot more details then that needs to go into some of the monitoring and evaluation of some of these policy directives. Professor Mary Metcalf is Commissioner at the NPC. Thank you so much for your time this morning. And thank you for tuning in. Yes.
I just wanted to say it's been so great talking to you. I'm a loyal listener and I always love your conversations with people. So thank you for the opportunity for us to talk about the NDP and ECD. Thanks, Cathy.
Thank you so much, Mary. I appreciate that a great deal. I really, really do. Professor Mary Metcalf, they're always so generous with her time, with her knowledge and her insights. All right, that brings us to the end of our show for today. We're back with you again tomorrow between 9 and midday. Up next is the book reading.
Sakina, we are vindicated as the Patriotic Alliance because at local level, we have always said that the DA is very arrogant, is very rude, it wants to be the boss.
And this is very unsettling. If it's unsettling for us as politicians, it's also unsettling for the citizens. And you can actually feel the crispness in the air, Sakina, that the people are tense.
Deputy President Kenny Kunene, and we also have African Christian Democratic Party's spokesperson in Gauteng, Bishop Dalton Adams.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM. SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
The book reading. Please note that the views expressed in this book are not that of the station. Listeners' discretion is advised. SAFM presents another episode of The Door, an addict's journey, read by Simpson Kumalo.
Chapter 5. Breaking Down the Door. Man is not what he thinks he is what he hides. Andre Mulro. Early one weekday morning, I was, as usual, hiding out in my bedroom. I heard voices in the house and immediately recognized the voice of legendary musician Hugh Masekela and the unique laugh of my friend the Lion King, Lebo M. I opened my bedroom door a tiny bit and tried to listen to what they were saying. What were they doing in my house? Had they heard about my ordeal? Who called them? I certainly didn't. Somebody had stripped me naked and told my secrets to the world. Theirs was my issue and mine alone. I didn't need anyone fueling the fire and announce it to the whole world. How could I face the world if everyone knew? Abner is on drugs. It was still my life and I wanted some control over it. Brahu was my role model. I looked up to him. What would he think of me? My reputation with him was damaged. I'd been discredited. All the times I'd been with Brayu and his organization helping musicians fight the scourge of drugs. When I'd done that with him, I'd been completely oblivious to the dangers of drugs and alcohol. I'd been to schools and churches and workshops with community leaders on the dangers of drugs and addiction. I'd been at the forefront of the fight for my church. As for Lebo M, I'd been there for him when his drunken stupors caused all kinds of problems for him and his family. I had watched him deteriorate under the clutches of alcoholism and pushed him to go to rehab in Los Angeles. Well, I guess it was my turn now. They must have come to rescue their brother who was in denial but needed to fly right. I thought I'd been successful in hiding my disease. I thought I was way ahead of everyone. But obviously my destructive behavior sold me out. Both these men had followed a similar path. Brayu had been a bona fide drug addict who blew millions of rands as a celebrity and was deserted by everyone, including his own sister Barbara. If anyone, he would know what I was facing. Lebo M too, a very successful brother who cracked the US code of the music industry and became very successful, had experience with alcoholism and underwent serious destructive behavior that needed intervention. He knew with what lay ahead for him in terms of his blossoming career, he had to beat the disease. They were in my house, and I knew what they had come for. I was far too messed up to appreciate their sacrifice. I wanted to wish them away, but I couldn't. I had to go and face them, but leaving my bedroom and trekking to the lounge seemed like a too long a journey, too tedious. But I couldn't stay locked in my room, so I washed my face and put on a clean t-shirt and better pants. I also thought if I smothered my face in Vaseline like my gran used to, it might take away some of the past few years' damage and all the sleepless nights. I was freaking out a bit. If I had called them, I could have been better prepared. I could have presented a more in control and cool person. I looked terrible. I had aged so much. I was self-conscious and wanted to look as presentable as I possibly could. But who was I kidding? You can't just pretend, and problems don't disappear under a layer of lotion. A change of pants won't lessen the impact of years of using. I had no place to hide. Two of the most important people in my life were going to be exposed to the real me. No amount of standing in front of the mirror would change the demon that looked back at me. I paced around, and eventually, because I didn't want them barging into my bedroom, I had to leave by myself. What a trip. Those few steps seemed like a lifetime. It was unwrapping a gift. Only I was the gift, but one that had taken a serious beating. There was loud talking and some laughter, but when I walked into the room, everything went silent. For a minute, nobody even blinked. I will never forget their faces when they saw me. The shock reflected spoke volumes. They didn't have to say a word. It was almost like they were seeing a ghost. I'm sure they hadn't expected to see something so bad. My cheekbones were sticking out, I was dark, and the Vaseline had done nothing to help. My clothes were hanging off my body, and I looked like a walking carcass. I tried to be my normal, cool self and attempted to give them a high five in the American way. Eventually, Hugh broke the silence with a chuckle and said, "Man, you look bad." They both stood up and hugged me. They were shocked that they could feel my bones and said I looked like a skeleton. They didn't mince their words. True friends don't. And I guess they had earned the right to say what they were saying. I had to sit there and take it for a while. All along I was feeling small, thinking I should have been more prepared for their visit. At least then I could have given them the partial truth and minimized the situation. I avoided eye contact, but I could see Lebo's shocked face in my periphery. He said I looked like an alien, big-headed, skinny body. Eventually I realized they weren't there to judge me. They both knew better than that, but I think the shock of seeing someone you love look like I look was hard to take in. We started to joke around a bit and the tension lessened. Brahu spoke about his own drug-related binges and how he not only lost everything and the people he loved, but also how he lost himself in the process. They asked me for details on how this had happened to me. Where did I meet drugs? The last person they expected to be an addict was me. I used to be a good boy. They knew my religious affinity and that I took church seriously. I was the one always nagging them to come to church. I wanted them to motivate and inspire confidence in the youth, be role models. They were celebrities and many people looked up to them. They wanted to know which drug it was that was eating me alive so quickly. I told them how it all started, and then Lebo and I began to reminisce about our time in the US. Out of all of them, I was the only one who never drank or smoked. But things happen. They just couldn't believe it could happen to me in South Africa. I was a bit pissed off that they insinuated I was holier than thou, and I let that slide. I was also prone to temptation. This wasn't the time to argue, though. For a quick minute, I felt hopeful and inspired to try something to help myself get better. But in reality, I wasn't ready to give it all up, and I wanted more. But I was willing to go with the illusion of wanting to get better. I sat there wondering how my life had just disappeared in a puff